Another week and more questions have piled up on the Overwatch University subreddit. Let's answer them. Here we go. Okay, first question of the week is, why isn't Lucio the preferred dive support? The support heroes that are usually played with dive are Ana and Brig. I understand that Brig is there to protect the Ana, and the Ana is there to heal and provide utility to the team from long distances, but why isn't Lucio played on dive, since he seems like the only support who can actually dive and follow up with his team? It's a fair question. Lucio used to be the dive support hero back in like late 2016, 2017. I recall playing Lucio Zen as part of the dive meta back in the day, but honestly, with the evolution of the game, there's just been more optimizations and theory crafting, and people have figured out that to play dive effectively, you don't actually have to all in all at once. So you're thinking, why isn't Lucio being played? It's because why can't we all just go in 5 or 6 at a time? But in reality, proper dive at the highest level is a lot of give and take at the beginning. You have to do a couple of soft dives here and there to control space. You don't necessarily need the Lucio to follow there, and Ana can heal from a distance pretty safely. The Brig is there planted to protect the Ana from counter diving, in a sense where if your team dives their backline, they will just start rushing your backline. Let's just take Numbani first, or Hollywood first, for example. Before you dive and all in, you want to take Hollywood's first high ground up there with your Winston, for example, and clear out that space. Do you really need Lucio to speed him up to jump there? No, he can probably make it on his own. And then once you've kind of established that space, all Winston needs to do is jump into the back, and that's one leap away. For Numbani, same thing. You want to jump to that close high ground, clear out the space first, fall down, push him off, and then go all in with your bubble as necessary. With the evolution of the game, Lucio isn't as necessary, and honestly, with the way dive is and the way people tend to spread out against dive, people often will start splitting up. So Lucio's aura is really only effective for himself and maybe like 1 or 2 people that are within his aura. Better used in brawl compositions now to actually speed up and enable people who don't have that mobility naturally, like Reinhardt, for example. But heroes like Winston, like Doomfist, like Wrecking Ball, the speed is kind of like it's diminishing returns at this point, because those heroes can accomplish their dive goals without the speed boost. So it has evolved. Ana Brig is preferred over Lucio. All right, next question of the week was, I finally just got my friends to play with me and we are getting destroyed. I got 3 friends to play with me, 4 of us in total, and we are getting killed in unranked and competitive, even though individually we're all pretty good and do well on our own. I think a major problem is we don't know what heroes to play for different game modes, maps, and to combat other teams' hero choices. I've obviously never had this issue by myself because I only have had to pick my own hero, but now that we make up 80% of the team, we are dying. What characters are good for what maps and game modes, or what's a good resource to figure this out? One thing you have to remember when you play grouped up with friends, you are going to be facing against other people who are in a full group as well. And honestly, the game has been out for like 7 years. You're going to be playing people who are still chilling and have 7 years of experience on you, if not more, who actually know some basic callouts and have a little bit of synergy. Maybe there's a group you're facing that have been together for 5 years. If you do well individually, yeah, when you're in a team, in a cohesive environment with your friends, like having some sort of semblance of an idea of what comp you should play is probably ideal. When you're fully solo queuing, you're playing random heroes, the enemy team is playing random heroes. When you're grouped up, you guys are all over the place. You don't really have a comp set up, but the enemy team, they're also in a group. They probably have some sort of idea of what they want to play, and that synergy together is probably overpowering you in a lot of cases. The best practice is actually less about picking up what characters are good for what maps, or I would honestly just commit to one, no matter what the map and what game mode. Hopefully you have one of the you're covering the tank role, because if you're a stack of 2 DPS, 2 supports, that random picking the tank can actually kind of dictate the composition you're playing. If you are the tank, you commit to either the dive, the poke, or the brawl. I would say poke, a bit more map dependent, so dive and brawl are something you might want to mix or hybrid and try around. Some safe and strong picks in a group right now are probably Ramattra. I'd prefer Ramattra over Rein if you guys opt for the brawl. Make sure you have one Lucio and then fill in the rest as needed. Some sort of strong DPS like Sojourn's very good in the meta right now. And then one very strong primary support like a Baptiste, like a Moira. I would prefer Baptiste if I were you with Brawl, but honestly, for an average group playing together, I think people are too focused on, no, don't play Moira, just play Baptiste, because the high level players don't play Moira that much. Just play what you're comfortable at. There's always viable substitutes, and kind of work on that cohesiveness together. Is there anything you can do against Pharah if you have bad aim? I just can't deal with Pharah at all. I'm silver 4 and whenever I try, it doesn't work. Any hit scan, I can't hit her. Torb, the turret gets insta-killed. Focus her team instead of her, I get 2-shot. Tracer, I can't play her. Pharah just seems to completely centralize games around her. If you can counter Pharah, you win. If you can't, you lose. No matter how much time I practice playing hit scan against her, it's never enough to be able to kill her. Even now, I'll have maybe a 35% accuracy at best against her on Ashe, so she just gets healed and I'm effectively dealing no damage at all. She dominates every game and forces the entire team to play to counter her. Because other than a god tier hit scan, I can't see any possible way to counter her. Is there anything I can do except get good? Because I've been trying that every single game I play against this character. To answer that, there is something you can do against Pharah if you have bad aim. Number 1, your pathing and the way you position your character has to be less predictable. Number 2, even if you have bad aim, even pressure shots are actually easier. You're going for the burst angle like Ashe, which is very hit or miss. If you're whiffing, you do nothing. But if you play something simpler like Soldier, despite the fall off damage from something like Soldier, it's a little bit more reliable because you have a lot of bullets to fire and maybe a few of them will hit the Pharah. Pepper her down a little bit, and even though you say she just gets healed, you'd be surprised at how much pressure shots apply to the Pharah to force her to reposition or take different angles. Not to be like a rude or anything, but a silver 4 Pharah, even though you feel like you don't have great aim, a silver 4 Pharah probably isn't absolutely dominating. It can certainly feel like it, but that's because nobody else is pressuring her, and if you're on Ashe, you're whiffing too much. Honest answer is switch to Soldier, pepper her down a little bit. Even if you don't kill her, if you pull a few shots will force her to be like, oh shit, I'm getting shot, and then I have to duck into cover, or I have to wait for my mercy to pocket. Remember, put yourself in the Pharah shoes. If you're flying around on Pharah and you get shot a little bit, don't you want to think twice? It's like, oh, I'm getting shot down a little bit. Oh, maybe I should duck down, drop down. It adds like psychological pressure and raises the tempo for the Pharah to have to adjust to that. And that can be a lot to kind of mitigate her value. In addition, obviously you're from the hit scan perspective, you can suggest other heroes for your team. A good diva on your team can help not necessarily kill her as well, because flying into the air and getting your full combo and killing a pocketed Pharah is very hard. But just holding a matrix here and there to remove some of the rockets goes a long way. Baptiste, Illari, Ana. Bap is easier for the same reason as Soldier, where you have a lot of bullets, like 3-round bursts, and you can find great times to kind of pressure her down. At the level I play at, some good Pharahs know how to, play angles pretty well. So I actually prefer Baptiste, where I can pepper a few bullets here and there, and that's usually enough to kind of force the Pharah to not play in like the main angle and absolutely destroy our team. Number 4, what is the point of Sojourn's Disruptor shot? I played Sojourn a tiny bit on release. I've just picked her up again, but I feel like I'm missing value with Disruptor shot. When it slowed enemies, it was a no-brainer to build charge or land headshots, but now that it just damages, I don't really understand the point of it. I'll still use it for a little bit of damage, but feel like I'm missing something unless it is literally just for that bit of damage. Well, the point of Sojourn's Disruptor shot is what you said, damage, of course. It does add quite a lot of burst. Something that people may not know is that it goes through shields. If a Reinhardt is holding up his shield like this and you throw that Disruptor shot right on him, unless he moves away, even if he holds his shield up, he'll take a lot of damage. So he literally has to be moved away from that if he doesn't want to take the full damage. It's extra damage, goes through shield, and it's a fantastic zoning tool to help enable you or your team to capitalize on that mispositioning. The DPS is nothing to scoff at. It's like 210 DPS if they sit in the whole thing. Obviously, people are not going to want to sit in the whole thing. They're going to move. If like you put it on the ground, like to the right of them, it'll force them to go left because they don't want to stay there. And that can help line up your railgun shot. Or if they're already in an open position, just shooting it at them for that extra bit of damage, like 30, 60 damage, right, before they move off. It'll allow you to do like just a single rail to the body to confirm the kill. You don't have to go for the headshot. The minute they start leaning towards one direction, there's no point of them strafing and going back in the opposite direction. So if you hit them directly and they start moving in one direction, it's almost guaranteed they're committing in that direction at that point. So that'll help align your shot as well. Interesting question here. Why are there so few people who play both Genji and Widowmaker in top 500? I checked the leaderboards from time to time. This always puzzled me. There's so many players who play Widow plus Tracer or Genji plus Tracer, but there's so few Genji plus Widow profiles. At the time of writing this, I counted 0 people from Asia, 0 from NA, and 1 person from Europe who has both Genji and Widow in their most played in top 100. Is it just because Genji and Widow are polar opposites and they prefer sensitivity, so it is difficult to play both with the same sense? There's nothing too in-depth with this. I'm thinking like in my average top 500 games, I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like some Widow players can often flex to Genji, so this is a little interesting that you pointed it out. One thing to remember is that top 500 is still like a little different until the end of the season. Some people don't show up in top 500 until they play 50 wins, which is a lot. And you can probably wait till the end of the season to get a better grasp of people's hero pools. But generally speaking, Tracer plus Genji is a very common combo. And then Widowmaker is often not good on a lot of maps. She's good on very certain maps like Havana, Junkertown, any sort of long sight lines, Circuit Royale, for example. But you don't get to play those every game. So naturally, Widowmaker hours are going to be a little bit lower, especially from all the nerfs. Before she got the fall off range nerf, people were just forcing Widow on every map, pretty much. But now that it's kind of limited a little bit, you'll just see occasional players just flex to it on those maps. And if you're a Genji player, the aiming of the projectile is very, very different from Widowmaker. So people who can exclusively play Genji probably don't play Widow, but those who can kind of flex to Tracer is, you know, tracking, but it is sort of like hit scan bullets, right? So like if you could play Tracer, you probably could flex to a hit scan like Widowmaker as well. You'll often find more Widow players probably leaning towards the Ashe or Sojourn because they're that style of player, but it doesn't mean they can't do it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything too deep with that other than like different kind of play styles and like effectiveness on maps at this point. How do you deal with Zarya? You're a Plat 1 DPS. Zarya is my least favorite tank to go up against. I solo queue, and every time there's an enemy Zarya, it seems like my team always shoots her bubbles and charges her, and we end up getting rolled. I try to time her bubbles and call them out, but my team coordination rarely happens. When I know she's low charge, I try to take out her supports, but I'm all that good. How can I, as solo queue DPS, better help my team? So there's this thing where you're right. You should be trying to time your bubbles and calling them out. That's actually very helpful information. What the team does with that information is up to them, but you're doing your job by at least making a call out on timing bubbles, 1 bubble down, 2 bubbles down. That's effective, so you can keep doing that. Generally speaking, a lot of lower level players in the lower metal ranks tend to always shoot the bubbles a little bit, but not enough to burst it, so they just tickle it a little bit and give the enemy Zarya a charge. And then at the higher levels, almost everybody shoots the bubble because a really good Zarya player can pretty much guarantee high energy for the rest of the game, for most of the game. So everybody's mindset, at least in the elo that I play in, is that we just shoot the bubble, especially if we're all alive, because forcing the bubble down pretty much allows you to kill her because of her positioning, right? Because she'll probably play very aggressively if she's bubbling, and if you can burst it down quick enough, you can eliminate her. I think best practice early on is just to pick one or the other. If focus fire isn't great on the team, the whole like bursting down the bubble is probably less and less effective the lower ranks you go. Best practice is to probably avoid shooting the bubble and baiting them out. Remember though, once you get past diamond, I would say on average more people will shoot the bubble than not, so it's better just commit all in versus not doing it at all. If you do any of the in-between, the bubble doesn't go down and she gets full charge anyways. So yeah. Does Rein counter Ramattra or does Ramattra counter Rein? I've been doing my darnest to improve at the tank role, and I've selected Ramattra as my main squeeze for now. I've been told that Ramattra doesn't really have any hard counters, just hard matchups, but I am batting 0 against Rein in comp. Like, Orisa's hard to deal with, but I have won against an Orisa before, but never a Rein. I always thought Ram countered Rein pretty well. Punches go through shield, so he's easy to attack through him, and other than charging away or counteracting, he doesn't have a lot of good tools against Annihilation either. So does Ram counter Rein or does Rein counter Ram? Okay, so in a strict 1v1, which is rare because this is a full team game, it's pretty 50-50, pretty much a skill matchup. I think in a simpler sense, if you're just like dumbed it down and people are like first time Rein versus first time Ramattra, I think Ramattra has the edge because you obviously can punch through the shield and you just will simply out DPS him if you like block the swing and punch in between. If you're playing like a person who has 500 hours on Rein, no matter what ranked, and 500 hours on Ram, it is pretty 50-50 because you actually said he doesn't have a lot of good tools against Annihilation, the Reinhardt, but he does. He has a shield. The shield blocks Ramattra's ultimate. A good Reinhardt will notice the Nemesis form and try to kite away because he knows he can get punched through it. And then once it's over, or if Ramattra ever gets forced to block, a good Rein can know how to charge and go for it. And Earth Shatter is pretty much free if he's in Nemesis form, because the only way Ram can block it is if he has the Void Barrier only in the Omnic form. So it really is kind of like a game of chicken. Who's using which cooldowns and which tank is figuring out when to best strike, because there's going to be phases where Ramattra is stronger, which is a Nemesis, but at the same time Rein can shatter. You can pin away. He can pin when he's blocking, and he can get a shatter off. If Ramattra is in the Omnic form, he has to be more careful when to shatter. And honestly, this is the best time for Rein to swing at him if Ramattra is too close. So it is a skill matchup. I'm surprised you have not beaten Rein. You just have to read his cooldowns and kind of figure out how to, best play against it. And the best way in Omnic form is to just poke, try not to get too close as Ramatra against Rein while you're in Omnic form, because that's your weaker form. Keep your shield ready if you know he has Shatter, so that's ultimate tracking. You're gonna have to like figure that out as a tank player, whether Rein has Shatter. Obviously his charge, if you need to block, you have to be careful when you're blocking for a moment and you see him start the wind up animation for the charge. You maybe need to unblock so you're not slow anymore with the movement speed, and hopefully sidestep it, or like quickly even switch back to Omnic form and pick up a shield if you know you can bait out a Shatter or bait something out. There's a lot of things you have to think about in this matchup. Question number 8, why does everyone hate Widow? I was playing comp last night and I picked Widow, trying to have some fun, plus they had a Pharah. As soon as I picked, our tank blew up and said, why does everybody on my team have to effing throw? Not only did I have more kills, less deaths, and more damage at one point, I had 40, 70 limbs and 13 deaths. I always played point. Our team still steamrolled them. I don't understand why everyone hates Widow. Like, enemies hate her if she's good, I get that, but why do people hate her when she's on their team? I think it's a combination of a lot of things where Widowmaker's damage will often not be the top of the scoreboard, and there's a lot of players that are just scoreboard sallies and see if Widow does not have a lot of raw damage on the team, she's not contributing. And Widows are very hit or miss, especially at very particular ranks. Widows are very deadly, and no one really complains about Widow on your team in high elo until they get killed like 3 times in a row without a pick. If you're not getting any picks, it's pretty much useless. So I guess a lot of people have this like preconceived notion that they're very like hit or miss on your team. If you're popping off of Widow, you can certainly feel it, but people have been burned a lot where their Widow just sits there and has like could not get a kill and can't farm any damage, so they become a scapegoat and get blamed very quickly. Number 9, is Illari still viable? I want to play her, but it feels like doing so is kind of throwing where I could get more value as Ana or KarQ. I just don't know how to play her in her current state. I honestly didn't play her much when she was OP either. Could any other Illari enjoyers please give me some tips? It seems like anytime I place down my pylon, it either gets destroyed or my team advances too far ahead of it for it to be any use. Illari's role has kind of shifted a little bit. So the OP Illari was back when her pylon was really good, where you could actually leave it for your team and go off on your angles and still DPS and poke from very strong off angles at the highest levels. The pylon was contributing for like 63% of all of Illari's healing, according to the lead hero designer before they nerfed it, which is a little too unhealthy. And ever since they nerfed that, the pylon healing was nerfed like 25%, right? It only heals 30 HP per pump versus 40, which is quite a lot over a long period of a game. Her strength is her DPS, her damage, and you can maximize that DPS if you take strong off angles and sustain yourself with the pylon, or obviously keep the pylon for your team so they can get healed and then you can keep DPSing. But her healing beam is only effective up close. So if you're taking these single off angles, who are you healing? Nobody. So your job is to just off angle poke. But back then you could do that and your pylon would still contribute a lot of healing for your team. So now she's in this phase where like if you want to do that single target healing, you have to play with your team with your beam, but then you lose that strong off angle presence. Her ultimate has been nerfed in a lot of ways where it can no longer pass through shields. Illari's ultimate on release was very easy to pretty much get guaranteed value. So even if you're playing with your team and you pop your ultimate, it's an instant zoning tool. It slowed everybody and the damage was deadly. It forced them to unclump and just spread out. It was a big position wrecker for the enemy team as well. But since that nerf, Illari's role is kind of like her ultimate is not as strong as it used to be. So like, why play poke on an off angle as Illari when you could opt for KarQ, who can poke from an off angle and quickly go back to the team to heal as needed. And her ultimate is like a strong engagement tool where everybody's buffed for a moment, right? That's an easier, more reliable ultimate than Illari's ultimate. The play styles were kind of just like contrasting each other. Do you play close with your beam, or do you have like a weaker DPS presence, or do you take your strong off angle DPS presence but have pretty much no heals for your team? That being said, it doesn't mean she's not viable. You can still get away with playing her if you still have great aim. She's very player dependent. If you have great aim and you're hitting all your shots, you will inevitably create a lot of value for your team regardless. It's just a lot harder to do that now, so you can, like most high level players, just opt for KarQ, but that doesn't mean there aren't any Illari players. So if you're good with her, you continue playing her, so don't worry too much about it. Final question of the week is, new to Overwatch, any tips? So I'm new to this game and I've had it for about 5 days or so. It's really fun, but I've just seemed to lose game after game. I'm 9-23 and the people I play against are just way better than me, and sometimes my teammates. I've tried playing many different characters and I feel like I can barely win. I'm starting to feel discouraged. Can anyone give me advice or help? I play Switch Pro Controller, if that helps. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, 9-23 means you played 30 games. There's 39 heroes in this game. There's like 30 maps in the game. Okay, you have not experienced every hero. You have not experienced every map yet. and there's a lot to take in. You have to learn every map, and every map has sub-maps too. Like Control has like 3 separate maps, right, that you have to learn. You have to learn Lijiang Tower, all 3 maps. You're gonna have to learn what all 39 heroes done. If you've only played 31 games, how have you covered everything yet? The relative cooldowns, what they all do, how powerful they are, do they stun you, do they do a lot of damage to you, do you have to avoid that? You have to alt track, you have to learn the objectives, what's strong, where are the strong choke points on the maps to take fights. You can feel discouraged, but this game is really a lot of variables to consider. So my best tip early on is to focus on yourself, close the gap on the knowledge. That's something you can learn while not playing as well. Like the whole game sense and feel for the game will come with time as you put more hours into it when you're still very early. But if you're at work or whatever, just listen to guides and tips that maybe I used to make, little tip matchups, learn relative cooldowns, you know, out of the game so you don't have that knowledge gap anymore against other players. And just put more hours into it. 9 and 23 isn't even that bad early on. You can even play against AI to slowly learn one thing at a time, the co-op versus AI or whatnot, whatever that mode is. Sit in the practice range. You literally go through each hero. There's that little training room there to practice your aim, find a correct sensitivity, and just get a feel for which hero you'd like to master and just get the game experience first. 30 games in is nothing. There's people with 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 games played, right? 30 games, 31 games in 5 days. Like Emong plays 40 games a day, and they have 7 years of experience on you, 7.5. Just put more time into it and take it one step at a time. And that's it for the Reddit questions of the week, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.